This is Gemara Baba Kama Daf Samoch Dalid. We're holding on the bottom of Samoch Gimel Amud Beis, 3 lines from the bottom. And once again, the learning for this month of Teves has been generously sponsored by a close friend of the Daf, Oschos Baruch Hashem, that we're able to still learn together. And all the learning should be an Ili Neshama for his father, Aryeh ben Ya'akov. Siyata Dishmaya, day by day, daf by daf, each word of Torah, elevating his neshama and bringing Aryeh ben Ya'akov closer to the Kisei Ya'akovod. And we're holding 3 lines from the bottom on Samoch Gimel Amud Beis, and we're in the middle of discussing the payment of kefel for a ganav. This goes back to the brisa we had yesterday, 2 different brisas, and we're within the lashon of the brisa. The both psukim, both parts that we quoted, Imatzi Aganef v'chulu, are referring to a case of Tayin Tanos Ganef. But says the Gemara, so what would the makar be for a kefel, for an actual Ganef? Navkole minatanya devei Chizkiah. 2 lines from the bottom, the Tana devei Chizkiah Yoimar Sharu Geneva. Says on the Chizkiah, the pasuk says the Torah could have said only Sharu Geneva, Bakol Bichlal, and everything could have been included. Why does our original pasuk have to say Shar, Chamar, and Seh? Why does it have to specify these 3 animals? And now that should have been enough just to say Shar. Explains the Gemara, no, for what have said such, I would have thought, Mahabrad Mifurash, Karv Ligabi Mizbeach, I would have thought that a Shar is an entity that's brought in the Mizbeach, and therefore, Avkol, Karv Ligabi Mizbeach. But however, Ma Yesh L'Chalahavi, so and therefore, what would we have included from Shar? From things that are carved like a mizbeach, I would have included Seh, a sheep. As we turn over to Samoch Dalet and Aleph, explains the Gemara, and this is the reason because Shar would have just been items which are carved like a mizbeach, which would have led one to believe that the only item which is included further is a Seh. Therefore, Kishu Oimer on the top of Samoch Dalet and Aleph, when the pasuk says Seh, Amor Hamani Mekayim Shomer Seh Hari Seh Amor. Now we know Seh is spoken about. Hamani Mekayim Geneva. So therefore, how do I know what the Torah specifies an item that was stolen? What does that come to say? Le Rabbi is a called Davar. Comes to include everything, and that's why the Torah wrote Seh. Says the Gemara, 1 second. Yomer Shar Seh Ugeneva Vakol Bechlal. And again, this is within the list of questions, as the Gemara is trying to figure out why the Torah had to specify Shar, Chamar, Seh, and Simla. Simla being the stolen items. So says the Gemara should have just said Shar, Seh, Ugeneva, and that would have done everything. Ilu Kachi Yomer, says the Gemara, if it would have said that, I would have thought Ma'abra Mefurash Davar HaKadosh B'Bechayra. Av kol davar kadosh b'b'chayra ma'ish chalahavi, without include chamar, and therefore kshoimer, when the pasuk expresses chamar, hari chamar amor, so amani mekayim geneva, the rabbis call davar. So therefore, it comes to include everything which are metaltalin and which are davar shavel kesef, which have an actual value, excluding a shtar, excluding metaltalin, and that's why the pasuk had to write all the examples. And with that, so Yomer Shar, so says the Gemara, Ani Mekayim Geneva, the rabbis called Davar. Yomer Shar, Chamar, Seuz, Geneva, Vakol Bechlal. Ilu Kachisi Yomer, then what would I have thought? Ma Brahma Furish Balichayim, Avkol Balichayim. Ma Yishchal Avi Shar Balichayim, Shoimer Chayim. Hari Chayim Amr, that's all living entities. Mani Mekayim Geneva. The rabbi is called Davar, and therefore that's the reason Lamaisa why it had a list Shar, Chamar, Seh, as well as Simla, as well as a stolen item. Continues the Gemara, Amar Mar, quoting the Brisa, Yomer Sharu Geneva, We are 13 lines from the top. The first one on line is Yoimar. Says the Gemara, the Torah could have only said Shar and Geneva. Asked the Gemara, really? Mi kesiv Shar Geneva? Geneva v'sharu dichsiv. Asked the Gemara, I don't understand. Is that what the pasuk says? Really, it says Geneva v'shar. Meaning, when you look at the pasuk, what do we see in the pasuk? It seems to say that both of these words are there for the klal u'pradu klal, and therefore asks the Gemara, it should only be by the specific that is mentioned. Let's go. Let's go to Rashi for a moment. Rashi in the second narrow line says, Mi kesiv sharu Geneva, Geneva shar ksiv. Says Rashi on the first narrow line, Miksiv Shar Beresha V'Hadar Geneva. If it would have first said Shar and then Geneva, then what would I have said? Tahavli Prat Uklal. Then I would have been able to learn Today I call Bichlal, then I say Klal Moisiv Ala Prat. Because then the generalization is adding on to the specific. Geneva v'shar ksiv. It says it's not true. Really, it says Geneva first, which is what? Not a prat uklal, but rather a klal uprat. Davli klal uprat. V'shar ein midyachrini loyin. Klal uprat is only keina prat. Says the Gemara, what was the havamina that it was coming to include everything? V'chid, if you're going to suggest that ilu nemar kamar, and if you're going to tell me, you know what the Brisa mean? If it would have said ilu nemar kamar, ilu nemar sharu geneva, meaning that the Torah would have listed in the other way. Umima says, Amri, are you able to suggest such a possibility? Ma prat mefurash avi sharu prat ugeneva klal. Prat uklal nase klal moisif. Ala prat, if it's a klal, if it's a prat and then a klal, then the klal comes to add on. V'sharvelu kol midi. Ella says the Gemara k'dechsev ka'amri. Rather, what do you have to say? You have to say that when the Torah says that it should have only said shar and a geneva, according to the way that the Torah said it, which is what? Geneva v'shar. The Torah said first geneva and then shar. So what's the hava mean that everything comes to be included? Or when it says that ma'abram mefurash, what should we have said? That the geneva is the klal and the shar is the prat. Klalu pratin b'klal masha b'prat. Sharin midyachrini loy. So says the Gemara, there's no way that number one, it didn't say Geneva, Shar v'Geneva, and number two, there was no way of the Torah writing such. So explains the Gemara, Amar midyachrini loy, Amar Rava Tana achayim kasamechlei. The Tana is being saimich on the fact that the pasuk says chayim, a living entity. Uklal upradu klal kamerle, and therefore it's klal upradu klal. Says the Gemara, 1 second. And of course, as you're realizing within this parakam Meruba, we're getting very, very deep into all the different drashais, all the different Yud Gimel Midais, Sha'atayr Nidreshes Vahem. Says the Gemara, but over here, the two klalim have to be similar. Yishmael has taught us who then in these cases, then even though it's a klal, upradu klal, still says Tanavir Yishmael, Yelta Darshin Klali Uprati. And says Rava v'hachika kashale, and the following was the question: Im hi matzei ti matzei lamali. What do we need a matzei to matzei? So says the Gemara, let's explain the whole brisa according to Rava. Yoimar shar. The pasuk says that the Torah could have said Sharu Geneva v'chayim, and then Akol Bechlal. That's what the Brisa meant. But I asked the Gemara 1 second. Ilu Kena Yisaf would have said such. Av kol davar karv ligam mizbeach. So ma yesh l'chalavi. So what else would you have come to include? Meaning, what other item which is a karva gam mizbeach would have been included? Se kshoimer se risa amar amani mekayim gineva. The rabbi is called davar. Yomer gineva v'shar v'sevachayim v'akol b'chlan. Hopefully, you should sound familiar. This is mamish a repeat of the top of the Amid as I was explaining. I'll play that in real time. Ilukeni yisemer. I would have thought ma abram mevurish davar shekadar b'chayra. I've called davar shekadar b'chayra. Ma yish chalavi. So what do you come to include? Only a chamar. Kshamar chamar, hari chamar amar. Hamani mekayim gineva. The rabbi is called davar. Yomer gineva v'shar v'sev v'chamar v'chayim v'akol b'chlal. Ilukein. Hayisi Yomer. What I have said. Ma abram mevurish balechayim. Av kol balechayim. Ma yish chalavi. And then what would that come to include? Shar balechayim. Kshamar chayim, hari chayim amar. Hamani mekayim gineva. The rabbi is called davar. So if this is all true, imi matzei ti matzei lamali. So the ma'isa, what do we do with the double up pasuk of imatzei ti matzei? Says the Gemara, yachi shaver kashalei. If this is the way that you're learning, then you indeed have a good question. So says the Gemara, mishum de islay purcha. No, there's a kasha. The rabbi is called davar. Me'echa kamaisi lei. Where do you learn how to include everything? Mechlal basra. From the final klal, klal gufei chayim ksivei. What do you mean? What is the last klal? The last klal is the fact that the pasuk says mechayim. The fact that the pasuk says that the animal has to be a living entity. Klal upradu klal ma'ika mahanile. So if this is true, so what does the klal upradu klal come to help? Ilasu called davar. It already is. Hachayim ksiv, balechayim in midachrini law. You can't be marba everything. Only balechayim shamahachi, and it's for this reason, says the Gemara. It's trich imhi matzei. This is why we need the pasuk of imhi matzei. But continues the Gemara, not being satisfied. 7 lines down. The first one line is himatzei amri vashnei klalais tismichi hadadi. Asked the Gemara, but the klalu pradu klal, both of them are next door to each other, both klalais. So how can you say how are we darshan the klalu pradu klal? Amar Ravina ketika amri b'marava kol makam shatamoiti shnei klalos asbuch of zelazan. We have two klal next door to each other. Hotel prat beinehem. Place a prat in between the two klalais. V'dainam bechlalu prat, and then you have to dan them up as a klalu prat, and therefore shadi shar beini matilim timatzeh. Place the word shar in between imati timatzeh. What does that include? Yasuyim balchayim mechayim nafker. You know to include balchayim the payment of kefil. It says chayim el asuyim davar she'ein balchayim. So it's including a non-balchayim. On how do we darshan it? Mabrad mefurish davar hamital tel v'gufay maman akol davar hamital tel v'gufay maman v'su shadei chamar b'ni matzeh liti matzeh. And once we're arranging the pasuk, says the Gemara, take the word chamar and as well put it between the two words. Lasuyim ma'i lasuyim davar she'in balchayim mishar nafkar. You know that lasuyim davar misuyam. It has to be a specific item, like we saw in the Mishnah. It has to be a quantifiable, specific item. Ask the Gemara, 1 minute. What do we need? Ella riba umiya v'riba. So says the Gemara, a new way of learning the pasuk. Shar chamar and simla, says the Gemara, it's a riba. It's coming to include. Umiyad, it's coming to exclude. Or v'riba, and it's coming to include again who? The Tanad V'Rav Yishmael, the Tanad V'Rav Yishmael, b'mayim based pamim. The Torah says b'mayim 2 times. Ein ze klalu prat. Says the Gemara, this is not a klalu prat. The fact that the Torah says the word mayim 2 times. Elo, rather, what is it? Rather, it is a riba umiyat v'riba, and therefore riba hakol. It comes to include all forms of water. So my Rabbi, so says the Gemara, what does it come to include? Rabbi kol mili, but yachi, the obvious kasha. So So Kolani Prata Lamali, if we're coming to Yimar by everything, what is the usage of all the different pratim, all different specifics? Shar Chamar V'seh, listed in the Torah, and this should sound familiar, says the Gemara. This, of course, is the original Marmakim, Chal Lemute Karka, Chal Lemute Avadim, Chal Lemute Shtarois. Says the Gemara, that's what everything is coming to exclude. Continues the Gemara now, asking back on the other man Amrim from the end of yesterday's year. Geneva Chalamute Shtares, Geneva V'chayim L'chadirav Damar. 1 second, I skipped. Did I not skip? Yeah, I skipped. One more time. Go back for a moment. I'm sorry, we're in the middle of the end of this teretz. Chalamute Karka, Chalamute Avodah, Chalamute Shtares, Geneva V'chayim L'chadirav. And says the Gemara with regard to Geneva and the word Mechayim is like Rav Damar Achia. Lekaren Kein She Ganav, that has to be make alive literally. Achye Lekaren Shein Kein Shenagav. Okay, so now we go back to what we saw yesterday on Samuel Gimel and Beis, and says the Gemara. Going back to yesterday, the two ways of learning of the Brisa. So says the Gemara, 15 lines to the bottom. First line is Chad, according to the Brisa. That said, one pasuk is for an actual ganav, one is for a toyin tanis ganav. The ganav atzmai nafgalei mimi matzei ganav. And the ganav himself, he learned from the pasuk. Ayi matzei ti matzei. My darshi be. What does he do to double lashon? It's very nice that he's learning out from here a very simple din of the ganav himself being kevel. But why did the Torah have to double it and say Yimatzei Timatzei? Says the Gemara, Mibaydech the Rava bar Ahilai. Damar Rava bar Ahilai, my time with the Rav, Damar Moide Bekenas, Barachach Ba'edim Potter. Where does he get that from? Moide Bekenas, and then Edim said that you're indeed Chayiv, you're still Potter because of your Haidah. He gets this from the Chsev Yimatzei Timatzei, Yimatzei Be'edim, Timsa B'Dayanim Prat. The Marshia is Atzma. In such a scenario, there would be no Kefel. Says the Gemara Givaldik Ulaman Damar, according to the opinion that says, again, asking back in the price that we ended off yesterday, we're 7 lines on the wide lines. Ask the Gemara, according to Mantam that says, Tanis Ganif, Tahayim Yimatziti Matzei, Mabele Ganav Atzmai. Marshia Atzma Island, where he knows if so, he makes himself into a Rasha, Masher Yashir and Elikim. And from there we darshan loy Marshia Satzma, and out of one incriminates himself. Well, the man, the Amr asking about further Chad began of a Chaim B'toim Tanis Ganif, I see Lech Mei Matzati Matzei, Le Marshia Satzma, Hi Asher Yarshion, my Darshi. How does he darshan the end of the pasuk in the last narrow line? Amlacha, Umi Baile, you know we need the pasuk for Prat, says the Gemara, not Prat, excuse me, first wide line, we need it for Lemoide Bekenas de Potter. It says the Gemara, okay, let's flip the tables. Man dem Torah, return down his ganav because Lemoide Bekenas. Bachach ba'edim is chayiv. They don't need a special pasuk to be Potter. Leman der b'chad v'ganav down his ganav. Dinafli ganav mehasam. Ask the Gemara on the third wide line. According to them, man damer bishlama. It's understandable. If what imi matziti matzilach the Rava bar Ilai avokolani brata lamali. Kede Tanya Devei Rav Yishmael. Tanya Rav Yishmael says the Gemara. Kol Avarsha Shenam Rav Nishnis. Loi Nishnis Ella Lidavar Shenischadish Boy. When the Torah repeats something, it's not for naught, but rather it's to teach us something, to teach us the Chiddush. V'ina Ganav Atzai B'Shvua. So says the Gemara, maybe the Chiddush is that a Ganav only collects kefil if he made a Shvua. Lo Sagadaitach L'Tani Rav Yaakov Omer Shnayim Yishalit. Shaloi b'shvua. Ata Omer shloi b'shvua. You know ala b'shvua? Amre loi kachaya ma loi kachaya. Amr Abaya loi lichtav rachman hashtayim yishalim b'ganav leisi v'kav v'chayim retain dan is ganav. That war with the kav v'chayim b'yima retain dan is ganav. Tebe teira asli yadei was mutter. He was given the item to watch. And yet Amar kol shalim trei ganav atzur so tzil saying tebe iser gasal yadei. You stole lo kol shkin you have to make efel. Al shnayim yishalim dikot rachmana b'ganav atzmai lamali. Tafilu shaloi b'shvua, concludes the Gemara, even without a shvua. Ayimatzei lachi udasa, says the Gemara. 1 second. Kash on the whole thing. Hami Baile, we need it for L'chadetanya. Yadai says the Torah, says the pasuk that if someone finds the item that was stolen in his hand, biyadai, then he pays kefel. Says the Gemara. Turn over to Sav Chesed and Alpha. I'm sorry, I don't have the page in front of us. Ein li eliyadai. Very well, if he steals with his hands. That's the double lashon. It's coming to be marbe, not just being gone with your own hands, but even if it's in your rishos. Says the Gemara, if this is true, imkain, and with this we conclude. Lema kra ohi mati timati ohi timati timati midishani kra shma mina tarti. Because the pasuk had dual issues, we learn out from here two dinim, one from the extra word and one from the word that it was the expressive term. We'll pick it up from the Gufa and Samachayim and Al for the next year. B'siyata. Dishmaya.